Welcome to the Transformation Leaders Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Marco Buchbinder. Marco is reimagining how work is done as CEO of Ampliforce, an artificial intelligence firm that deploys AI agents to handle tedious manual tasks so humans can focus on more impactful roles. Prior to Ampliforce, Marco spent 18 years in cloud computing, storage and big data. A global citizen, Marco has held 5 international assignments and speaks 4 languages. But before we jump into the conversation, a quick note about the Transformation Leaders body of knowledge. I love this quote from one satisfied customer. It's like having a highly experienced mentor by your side 24/7, providing expert guidance on all things transformation. Click on the link below to get your copy and to accelerate your journey to becoming a transformational leader. Now let's get into the insightful chat with Marco. Well, welcome Marco to the Transformation Leaders Podcast. Great that you've been able to join us today, all the way from Boston. I'm really looking forward to exploring a little bit more about your experience and your role and your work with Ampliforce. You can explain a little bit more about that as we go through. But just as part of the introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're getting involved in and how you first got involved in sort of change and transformation.
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, Tony, thanks for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And a little bit about myself. So I'm an Italian citizen. I moved over to the States when I was 8. And then after university, I moved back to Italy, working for a global technology company, and spent the initial years in selling technology to customers, and then they moved me to Rome, and then Vienna, then Buenos Aires, and eventually to London, and in various roles, customer-facing roles, building out bigger organizations, all the way to then ultimately moved back to Boston, which is where the headquarters of this company was, where I started and led their emerging markets board. And I tell you that because of the fact that, my background, I would say, has been always focused on engaging customers, and trying everything possible to be just a great listener, and building organizations that, as you hear, often possibly overhyped word, but being very customer centric. And if you are customer centric and you can really understand that everybody has evolving needs, and but the companies that are ultimately most successful, as I'm sure you've seen, are the ones that don't look at technology just from a tactical perspective and kind of one-off perspective, but are looking at it more from an overarching perspective. And that's why I think the word transformation is a very appropriate word in terms of best practices, in terms of how to really leverage technology, versus looking at technology, as you well know, just as a tool, but looking at it more as the outcome. What's the outcome is a transformation outcome, and the how ultimately happens to be technology.
No, absolutely. And you touched on it there, actually. Our first question, formal question in any of these episodes is, how do you define transformation? So you started and touched on that then. So do you want to give me your definition of transformation?
Yes, it's the company looking at, say, their 3-year plan. In some cases, 2 years, some cases it'd be 5 years. But imagine not just today's plan, but looking out more in terms of what their to-be plan is, which often is multi-year, and understanding, okay, by 3 years from now, when we bring the leadership in and the company together in, what does success look like, right? Considering the evolving landscape and the ecosystem, the competitive landscape, and where do we need to be in order to really high-five each other and deem that the past 3 years were really successful and we really out-executed the strategic plan, the 3-year plan. And that in itself, to me, is maybe my view of what transformation is, because it's impossible for that company just to say, hey, our 3-year plan is to continue doing what we're doing without adapting anything. And so the notion, at least in my view of transformation, is it's an evolving model, right? That requires how you do business both internally and externally. And so it's a continuous transformation, but hopefully with an end goal in mind. But it's an evolving model.
Yeah, that term, it's a continual process, is critical, I think. And I was having a conversation yesterday with someone, and they were talking about the transformation program. And I was saying, is it really a program? The activities that you're doing at the moment may be structured as a program, but transformation has to be continual, because you don't know what the world's going to look like in 2 years, 3 years. You know what the outcomes that you're looking to achieve in those terms, but the world might have changed and you need to be agile and adapt to that. And if all you're doing is fixed in terms of this is the way that we will drive this organization forward, if you're too fixed, then you might come unstuck. So I think, yeah, that sort of continual transformation term, I think, is critical, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, then. So you understood how you got into the world of technology and change, etc., earlier on in your career, but you're doing some quite interesting things now, aren't you?
Yeah. So today I have I have the privilege to lead a company by the name of Ampliforce. It stands for the amplification of the workforce. Our mission as a company is to reimagine how work is done. In simple terms, help companies reimagine how work is done, which, to your earlier question, is a form of transformation unto itself. And we do that by providing what we call AI agents. And our definition of AI agents are, imagine it's the latest tested and proven by us categories of AI, including generative AI, machine learning, NLP, computer vision, in addition with some automation technologies that are less intelligent in their own right. Imagine we combine them in our platform, and we use them to deploy custom configured, purpose-built solutions for customers. And these solutions we call AI agents. And these AI agents are deployed in areas where customers are having problems hiring or retaining employees, or are looking to dramatically increase workforce productivity. It could range from research department to finance, to manufacturing, to operations, you name it. And it's where the customer doesn't want to be bothered by selecting various tools and trying to integrate them, what have you. They'd rather go to a company that provides them, again, a fully configured solution that is really priced based on the outcome. And so each of our agents, you don't pay for any licenses, you pay actually for the work they do, which is very unique, and that's our form of guarantee. So it could be a couple pounds for every invoice, maybe £5 for every claim processed successfully. It could be in a number of ways, but we take on the risk for the customer. And we believe that as a whole, Tony, is a way to accelerate a company's AI adoption, because by taking out all that friction and basically saying, wow, these guys are coming in, they're going to provide me a fully configured solution. I don't have to test it. And if it doesn't do the work, I don't pay them. That's a risk-free proposition.
Absolutely. But I also like how you position it as an agent that's taking on the challenges that organizations are facing, whether that is through retention or not work that's not necessarily attractive to lots of people, and taking that ability to put an agent in to do that work on a 24/7 basis, that then frees up the resources to go and do maybe more productive stuff or more innovative stuff. And I think that's quite an interesting approach to how an organization can start to embed AI into their transformation agendas.
100%. Listen, the backdrop is again, going back to the theme of transformation. If you look at the global labor pool, it's shrinking, and that's due to factors associated with aging populations, great resignation, quiet quitting. And again, if you're any company in any industry, how do you either sustain your growth rate? How do you retain your market share? How do you grow your market share over the next 3 years, 5 years, decade, knowing that the labor pool, global labor pool, is shrinking? And that means that you're going to naturally have a harder time competing for new hires. And then you're going to have a harder time retaining those employees. So on the backdrop of that, we are interested in engaging with customers to recognize that that's a lose-lose proposition, and they must transform themselves, transform how they do work, and hence our mission to reimagine how work is done. And for those customers that are looking to deploy a paradigm shift to how the work is done, that's where we come in, and much like a business process reengineering firm, and we leverage consulting partners, we try to do a very quick assessment of your as is. How do you do work today in an area where you're struggling to hire or retain employees? And then we propose 3-4 days later a new plan that involves the customer deploying these AI agents. And it's not, again, we don't see it as much as what is propagated in the news, that AI is going to take over the world and everyone's jobs. Certainly, AI is replacing, as we speak, jobs, but I think there's a bigger opportunity in the context of the fact that there is this shrinking labor pool where I think the right companies are going to say, I don't want to fire any of my employees. I just want to reposition them to areas where they can do more meaningful labor, hopefully more satisfying labor. And let me reallocate the labor to, that's mundane, to your point, Tony, that's repetitive, to these AI agents. So there is a win-win, but it starts from the leadership. And the leadership has to not only speak what I just mentioned, but also deliver against it by providing training programs, by providing bonus pools to motivate and incentivize those knowledge workers to maybe take on something different, more challenging, but with them understanding that there's a bonus and there's maybe career progression behind that.
And in your experience, how are organizations adapting to that, and what challenges are they facing in embedding some of these agents?
Well, so it depends. I would say across the board, it depends on the culture of the leadership. If you have a culture of leadership where they're concerned about AI, they've read more the negativity behind AI, such as the biases, the hallucinations, the lawsuits, they're probably going to be risk averse and less likely to want to deploy AI or do it maybe just in very isolated areas, and maybe in part to satisfy the board who's prodding them to demonstrate deployment of AI. Those are the folks, to be honest with you, that we try to avoid, because I don't think they're ready yet to take on AI seriously. Instead, we try to gravitate towards the leadership of companies that see that AI could have a more transformative effect than the actual internet, which is what I firmly believe. And therefore are really looking to embrace a paradigm shift, but in a way that is practical. And that's what we stand for in a big way, which is we want to deploy enterprise grade AI that never hallucinates, that doesn't have biases, that is 100% under the control of their human bosses, because each of our AI agents has a boss that's the human, and they're fully auditable. So there's no ever a chance that our AI agent does something rogue on its own, because that's not how we configure it, right? But nonetheless, those customers, therefore, are the ones that believe in AI, believe in the transformer. They may not have all the answers, Tony, but also, I would say, share a vision of being pragmatic. So let's not start with a massive project, okay, where you need to get 100% buy-in that might take a year to deploy. No way. Let's start instead with something very pragmatic. Let's start with a couple tasks that the AI agents can take on, where we can deploy an AI agent in as little as 4 weeks. And again, the customer doesn't pay for anything until it starts doing its work. And that work is going to cost less than the current labor expense to do that work. And so we've had success, I must say, with that category of customers who, again, maybe, I wouldn't say are 100% confident with and assured by AI, but know that they must, because they know their competitors are probably already adopting AI, but want to do it in a pragmatical way versus making it a big projects. And again, you and I have been around for many years and decades, and we can point to hundreds of projects that failed, whether it's starting with mainframes or mini computers or whatever, because the vendors, I believe, weren't pragmatic, were just too focused on revenue maximization and sold a massive project that shouldn't have been sold to begin with.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that your approach is to position it as a virtual person. Ultimately, it's you have got a team of people. One or two of that team are doing repetitive tasks. Well, let's drop in an agent to release one of those or two of those out of the team to go and do more productive work. And it is that virtual person that you're dropping in, and giving that ability to almost line manage that agent. I think that will help the acceptance and mitigate some of the risks that, as you've already highlighted. You just need to pick virtually every day in the newspapers and online. There's stories about how AI is going to do this and what the impact of AI is going to be on this and that. But it's like any technology, isn't it? There's lots of scare stories out there. But actually, if you break it down and start to use it to benefit the organization, the individuals and the teams, it can have a massive impact.
Yeah, and listen, I believe that I lived 3 years in the UK, and I have some great colleagues in the UK. We recently opened up a subsidiary in the UK. We have some really meaningful customers, and I would say that it might be just the British mindset, but I've always highly respected working in the UK, because there's a much more logical, structured approach that you take for some reason. And I know one shouldn't stereotype or generalize, but I found great success, particularly in the UK, because I think a lot of folks just embrace the pragmatism, yet the very structured, process-oriented approach to generating meaningful ROI. And that with that mindset, you can go a really long way. It's when you don't deploy as a best practice pragmatism, it's when you don't really understand the processes today that becomes more difficult, if you will, to take that approach. And so it is, in like I said, it's in every single case, it's about making the existing employees more productive. And I know that might sound like a marketing spin, but we really live it, and we really implement it. And when that happens, we've seen, and to me, this is all about psychology as well. We've seen the greatest, um, the greatest folks who were against AI to begin with, and you can tell them in the room, Tony. I'm sure you've seen this hundreds of times. Who you initially come into the room to do your kickoff, and you can see they're the ones that are really concerned and try to poke holes. Within a month, when we do things right, they become the biggest adopters. And if you're a betting man, there's no way that you would ever bet that those people become the biggest adopters, but it's because they realize that, wow, now these AI agents are making them more productive, as we talked earlier. Or allows them, they're freed up to do more meaningful things for the company. And that's the key, right? And that's something that's the humans controlling that. It's not the AI. So it's how you frame AI. And at the end of the day, AI is just another tool, right? And so it's how you implement a transformative plan that's multi-year and that's really driven by pragmatism.
Yeah. It's interesting. Something just popped into my mind around the cycle that organizations go through in the sort of transformation focus. It's outsourcing, offshore, onshore, all that sort of stuff. And history says that a lot of times those activities don't deliver the desired end result, because a lot of the time all they're doing is outsourcing problems. They're not in an ideal world, you'd work out a really, really effective process and then outsource it. And that's when you can really start to get the benefit. So the stuff that you were talking about earlier about the as is and understanding what individuals are doing now, is it correct to say that even if that is an inefficient process or ineffective process, do you look to streamline that process and then put the agent in, or do you just say, well, tell us what you're doing anyway, and we'll just copy it, and we'll create a virtual you, and we can do it 24/7, 365. So you're not removing the inefficiency, but you're automating the inefficiency, so it's not as impactful as it could be if you continue to do it in the way that they do it with humans. Is that a fair assessment, or do you look to do a lot of process engineering, re-engineering up front before you put the agent in?
That's a great question. We always, it's a bit our internal mandate, even where the customer doesn't require it. We always look to recommend improvements in the process. Mm-hmm. But again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but taking some pragmatism approach. So we're not going to recommend a wholesale, change in entire processes, because though maybe that is probably the ideal state, it would be too disruptive for the company. Mm-hmm. So, but we always, Tony, look to the 2B that we present as part of our proposal does in fact eliminate the obvious tasks that shouldn't be automated, because even if you automate them, you're still adding inefficiency. Do you see what I'm saying to the automation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And
process times are longer.
But it's within reason, and in many cases, these are new customers, and as you have to earn the trust of the customer, and so our goal, that's why we deploy agents in as little as 4 weeks. We do that because we want to show the impact of AI agents as quickly as possible to earn the trust. Yeah. And so in order to earn the trust, we don't want to elongate, to be honest, the process, even though in some cases our team might want to suggest a total overhaul of the processes, but that in itself could be a 6-month,
Yeah.
reprocess engineering engagement. And we don't think that even if that might be benefit to us, it wouldn't be of benefit to the customer. Do you follow me? The customer is looking to automate processes. So we'd rather forego the business of 6 months worth of engagement and instead say, no. Let's provide some pragmatic improvements, but so that we can still deliver that agent in as little as 4 weeks.
Yeah. So there's the balance, isn't there, between speed to value, and being able to demonstrate value very, very quickly, but then presumably you can continue to evolve and develop that agent. So it's not dropping in and that's it. It's like any other person, isn't it? You drop them in and then you look to continually develop them and improve them.
100%. The way we've configured and the technology behind our agents is quite unique, that allows for continuous improvement, continuous upgrades, as new capabilities come out. So exactly, I'm glad you raised it. Exactly to your point, we'll have plenty of opportunities to reconfigure and improve. And as part of that, to your point, that's when we can maybe suggest better process reengineering along the way.
So just coming back to the news stories and the doom mongers amongst the press, what do you see the future of work being? And if we fast forward, 10 years, say, what do you think work will look like for the average person?
So 10 years from now, when you look at a company's organization, could be a global company and what have you, could be a small mid-sized business, you're going to see, if you were to look at a headcount chart, you're going to see headcount that's represented by knowledge workers and headcount that's represented from AI agents. It's going to be that clear. It's a true, I envision a true organizational transformation, right? Where companies are letting into their building a new type of employee. It happens to be called an AI agent. Now, the degree to which an organization is going to have 50% of its headcount as AI agents versus another one that's going to have only 10% is really going to be based on the leadership. And but that's what I envision. And so now let's flip that around. Let's pretend I'm a naysayer and I just heard myself say that. That could, I could easily say, well, Marco, you've just outlined the gloom and doom where people are going to lose their jobs and what have you. Well, then I would argue that you could have said that the same thing based on a number of different industrial revolutions that we've seen. When the combustion engine first came aboard and what have you, and all of a sudden people thought farmers are going to lose their jobs, right? Instead, they became even more productive. But some also decided as a result to say, you know what, I'm going to go into accounting or what have you. And so I tend to stick to, like many of economists that I've spoken to, just look at the numbers, and there's going to be a shortage of human employees. And so I don't see the gloom and doom. I think there could be, you could point to, again, a number of eras over the course of the last 200 years that have demonstrated that as technology was introduced, was there displacement of people? Of course. Were jobs lost? Of course. But if you spend a little more time on it, you'll see that many folks were adapted to different opportunities, and that's what I see. I think
it's highly likely to be like the last 10 years, isn't there? If we went back 10 years and said, okay, let's look at all the jobs that exist now, and then what percentage of those existed 10 years ago, and it wouldn't be 100%. I don't know what it'd be, probably 70, something like that. But a hell of a lot of new job types have happened over the last 10 years, and that will continue, won't it? And people will evolve as we always have. So,
and look at the new generations. I mean, the new generation, which is going to be prevalent, right, in terms of the representation of the job pool in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Of course, they're we can complain about the amount of time they spend on their phones, but they're the definition of instant gratification, right? And they're the definition of wanting things more and more automated, because that's what they know. Now, many have yet to get jobs and get experiences in terms of manual processes, but they know mostly automation, right, in terms of what they see in their phone. And so ultimately they're going to be the employees that are going to embrace these AI agents, because that's the only thing they know. And so again, I'm not a big believer of the gloom and doom, and I do believe I do have major concerns in terms of AI getting in the wrong hands, or being integrated in mission critical, say, military systems of sorts. But that's a different conversation, right?
yeah.
But in terms of the conversation we're having today, I think this is for people who embrace AI, they're going to flourish, and I truly believe that their quality of lives will improve dramatically.
So obviously, this podcast is all about transformation, and it's called the Transformation Leaders Podcast. So, if there's one thing that you want to leave the transformation leaders that are listening to this podcast and watching it on YouTube about how they should look to adapt or look to evolve over the next few years, so that they can be at the center of this movement, what would that message be?
Well, so forgive me in advance, but I am going to just mention that I spent 3 years writing a book that came out a couple of weeks ago. So if I may, I have a book that's called The AI Agent Mandate. Right. It's available on Amazon, and it's a self-plug, so apologies, but I do believe that that's a practical guide to implementing AI, not as a tool, but as if it was an employee of sorts. Hence the name, the AI Agent Mandate. And I look to frame the problem statement is what I call the perfect labor storm, which is what we've discussed.
Yeah.
And it's a practical guide to assessing, all the way from assessing how to start all the way to implementing the first AI agents. But so aside from the book, I just would advocate the fact that, much like the internet was quite transformative, for everyone to spend whatever amount of time that they think is appropriate, at a minimum maybe 30 minutes a week, on learning about a new tool, but not just reading, but literally downloading a new tool. It could be, hey, using Copilot, it could be ChatGPT. It doesn't have to be, buying an AI agent, but get familiarized with that, because I think as people do that, their minds will start opening up in terms of the efficiencies of AI. And I think that's the first step. The first step is kind of reframing people's mindset, particularly if those people are just reading the gloom and doom. Mm-hmm. So I would say first, just become a practitioner, and And then from there, it's really up to that individual whether they want to become, leaders and transformation leaders within their company. I do think, and you and I were speaking about this a bit earlier, I do think for the people that are really ready to embrace AI, and by the way, when I say AI, I'm not saying necessarily as a coder. I'm talking about it as a transformation agent.
Yeah.
If you can start developing skills, again, not coding, but familiarity in terms of how to leverage different tools for different processes, you have a chance probably to promote yourself internally to become that AI change agent, if you will. And what I mean by that is to work with leadership to help identify processes that could be automated, and not with the goal of just automating one process, but hopefully being a leader to help shape a transformation plan for the next 3 years. And so that's an example of new jobs that, may not exist as you may know it in your company. So if you look at the open recs, you may see, nope, there's not a role per se that is a AI transformation agent or leader. So create one.
Yeah.
But start by practicing a couple of the tools and see what happens.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marco. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes. And we're recording this on the 17th of October. And if you take a look on the Transformation Leaders Hub website, I posted a blog post this morning, coincidentally, on this very subject about how the transformation leader needs to evolve in the world of AI. So, you've just had Marco's view. Have a read of the blog post to get my view on that. There is definitely alignment between our respective views on that. Once again, thank you very much, Marco. It's been a great conversation. In terms of if people want to catch up with you and touch base with you, what's the best way of contacting you?
It's Marco Buchbinder, MarcoBuchbinder.com. That's my website, or via LinkedIn. Again, MarcoBuchbinder, and would love to engage. And Tony, thanks again for the opportunity, and then really enjoyed the conversation.
Brilliant, thank you. Marco, a massive thank you for joining us today and for sharing such valuable insights. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and join the conversation. Your voice matters, and by subscribing, you'll not only stay up to date on our latest content, but also contribute to the ongoing debate around what it takes to lead successful transformations. Don't forget to grab your copy of the Transformation Leaders Body of Knowledge. It's a must-have resource for anyone serious about mastery and change leadership. The link is in the description below. And while you're at it, check out the Transformation Leaders Hub, the #1 global community for those working in change and transformation. See the link below. Thanks again for listening or watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.